Why, hi there. I'm Ron. And I'll tell you who's joining me in a minute today for the Digital Dice Podcast, episode 192. Is that the year that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue?
That was the year before.
No.
That was the year before.
Oh, was it the year before? Okay. Ways to get a hold of us. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/digital dice. You can send us an email at digital2dice@yahoo.com. That is the word TO. Hey, we even have a website at www.digital2, that's the word TO, dice.com. A text or a voicemail at 978-751-DICE. That's 978-751-3423. Or you can listen to the archive of shows on Spreaker.com. And today, on the 192nd episode, we have a very special guest as we end year 4. Care to guess who that is, Gardner?
Well, since I have not been allowed to speak yet, I take it I'm the special guest.
In May of 2019, a relatively new gamer was in the prospect. He was watching my football stuff on YouTube when I was streaming live on YouTube, and we started talking back and forth. And I think we'll get into some of the other stuff that he played on early on, but he started to watch my Action PC stuff, and we got to know each other a little bit, and he really was just intrigued by the whole thing of playing nostalgic games as opposed to video games. And, he's a little bit older than that. And so just the control, he's told the story before, just that, the reflexes were starting to go, and he was discovering a whole new style of gaming. And so I think about May of 19, you took your camera and you did 3 or 4 little walks around the beach. And that became the first part of what is now Digital 2 Dice, which was Dave Gardner's story about how he became from a digital video gamer to someone that plays cards and dice and sports games. And so our guest, as we do the last show of year 4 and kind of the first show of year 5, is the creator of this podcast, Dave Gardner. How are you?
Well, good to be here. Always good to be here.
Always good to be here, but it's always kind of interesting to be on the other side of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't get too many interviews. I mean, occasionally I'll get something. Yeah, I just did an interview with James Marshall for his new magazine.
Jamie Marshall, yeah.
Yeah, his new magazine just come out that he's posted there on some of the groups that you've seen. So I've once in a while someone will talk to me about that, but most of the time I'm the one doing the interviewing.
So the first question we ask every guest.
Okay.
If you were to go back to any sporting event that you would have wanted to have seen in person, I mean, you've asked this question a good 55, 60 times over the last 4 years. Dave Gardner, what would you go back and see?
I've asked that question so many times.
I know you have.
And I still don't know if I have. I mean, there's so many of them. How do you choose just one? I think the one I come up with one time that I was talking to somebody with is that I saw an image either in a magazine or on the internet somewhere of an old hockey game in Montreal. And, I don't know how accurate the picture was, or it wasn't a picture per se. It was more of a drawing, but it showed people skating on the ice. The net was just like 2 sticks driven into the ice. There wasn't any boards or anything. And it was all these people in, late 1800s, early 1900 dress, standing there watching these people skate on the ice and play this game. And I think for me, I think it would be really neat to go back, and I don't have a specific one in mind, but to go back and watch any of the very first early attempts at organized ice hockey.
Interesting.
I think that would be really neat to see what the origins of this sport was, as far as, how they hit the puck, how fast they skated, how did the goalies make the saves? It's like, was anybody in the audience afraid of getting hit by the puck? Because they were all just standing there watching this thing. And it's just,
right.
It's kind of like when you're watching, like a soccer game, all the parents are lined up right on the line watching the game. And so there's this puck being whacked around. And it'd be fun to go back in time and see the origins of ice hockey.
I would have sworn that you would have said the Bobby Orr game 4 of the 70 final.
That's on there. That's up on my list.
I would think so. I know that we always get surprised when questions get asked and how they're answered, but I could have sworn that would have been your answer. Did you know that the University of New Hampshire, and most of the other major colleges up here in northern New England, didn't play indoors until the 50s and 60s? They just played on, we had the lake here, so if that froze over, you could play. And Vermont was a small program, but New Hampshire didn't play indoors at home until 1956.
I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, because you look at some of the Russian training videos from the Summit series and like a little bit before that, late 60s, early 70s, even in Russia, they were doing a lot of their playing outdoors. I don't know if they had any indoor rinks or if they had maybe one or two, but they did a lot of their training outside on the ice. Now, Russia gets a lot more winter than we do usually.
Right.
But, yeah, that's not uncommon for places to not have indoor places to play. I actually, in 1985, I was contacted by a college here in Massachusetts, and they wanted me to play goalie for them in the college. And
you were a high school hockey goalie.
I was a high school hockey goalie, and I was like, well, that's weird because I'm the backup. I go, why don't you want the better guy? And they're like, well, we really don't think we could get him because it was a D3 college. So they said, why don't you come down? So I went down with all my goalie gear as a high school, and it was only right up the street from me. And I said, okay, I'll do one of your practices with you, right? Well, we got dressed in this really weird room, and we went outside, and the rink was outside for the practice. And it was actually it was snowing. And there was no glass. It was chain link fence, but that's the rink that they played in. It was outside, and, you get snow on the ice because it was snowing. And I played one practice with this college team outside.
How different was it, the ice and all that, compared to what you were normally used to?
Obviously, it's very different than outside. Although I was only 18 at the time, so I'd spent a lot of times playing on the ponds, 14, 15, 16 years old. And it was only been a couple of years since I started playing organized hockey at that point. So when I was inside at rinks, it was only a couple of years of doing that. So I had played outside before, but it still was it was the chain link fence instead of glass was weird. I got to say that was really weird.
I would think so.
Just because it hits and it dies, you really can't bounce it in off of there. You're worried about sticks going through there and getting caught. It's just very different. But I did play that one practice outside, and I think that probably in 3 years after that, they finally got the funding to do an indoor rink, and they got rid of the outdoor one. But I played outside.
Okay, so. What got you into hockey? How did you become a hockey fan?
Bobby Orr.
Okay.
My dad was big into hockey, and of course, the big bad Bruins when I was growing up. I think I was 3 years old when they won that cup in May of 1970, and that was a big deal. Right. I don't remember too much of that. The next one I kind of remember, I think I was 5 when they won it in 72, so I have a few more memories of that.
Okay.
But when I grew up, we had an apartment. It was 2 families in this house, a small house, and we were at the bottom floor, and the driveway was huge. Okay, it was a super long driveway, and there were fences on both sides of the driveway. So in effect, we had a hockey rink.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Now, granted, there was no netting behind the nets on each side. So if you missed the net, you were, we'll send you a postcard. We used to say when you went to fetch the ball, but we had boards on each side, so you could play it off the boards to yourself and go up. And we played with a tennis ball. So, and because it was a driveway, there's no traffic. And so I was out there shooting a ball every single day. We'd have people come over and relatives and friends and kids in the neighborhood because it was such a safe place to play because you weren't in the street. And so that's just kind of how I started, with just my dad watching it and I get into it and, just took to hockey. And I was playing it every day in the driveway. And that's something you could do by yourself. With baseball, you need someone to pitch it to you. You know what I mean? So I didn't get into baseball till I was probably 9 or 10 years old. But at 4 or 5, I was out there playing hockey every day myself, shooting at the net and practicing off the boards and whatever it was. And yeah, so that's kind of how that started.
So basketball or football? Was your dad a fan of the Celtics or the Patriots or whatever? So was that on a lot? And obviously gravitated towards hockey very early.
Yeah, Patriots. He was a football guy. I think it was
Okay.
mostly hockey and football. Big Patriots fan.
Okay.
Although back then, 70s and 80s, Patriots were always the second or third place team. They never, maybe they got in a wild card game once in a while, but they never really were a threat to win anything until that one crazy ride in 85, 86.
Right. So, okay. So you were a video gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that you didn't do any sports games that we normally talk about on the show until you were in your 50s or close to your 50s. So what was the first video game system? Did you have the infamous Atari 2600?
Oh, I had one before that.
What would you have?
We had the, I think it was called the Sears Telepong or something like that.
Oh, you know what? We had that too.
I got it for Christmas one year. Must have been 77, I think it was. And it's this little unit. I'm trying to think what it looks like. Just little unit in front of you, probably a foot long, and it had two little controllers on it. And you plugged it into the back of the TV. It was all black and white, and the audio actually came from the unit itself. And there was Pong, there was hockey, and the only difference between Pong and hockey is hockey had the nets, and Pong had the wide open back. And then there was a racing game on there. And
really?
Yeah. It was called Sears Telepong or Sears something like that. And I remember going into a restaurant about 10 years ago, and they had all this crazy stuff nailed to the wall as memorabilia. And one of them was that Sears Telepong game. I was like, oh, I had that as a kid. So that was my very, very first one, was that there.
Okay.
And then we did get the Atari at one point, and then the Intellivision, and then it went from there.
So what would you have considered to be your first serious hockey game? Obviously before the Sega, Atari or television or something like that.
Oh, boy. The Atari had terrible hockey. The
Atari had terrible all sports.
Yeah. The Mattel Intellivision didn't have a bad hockey game, except that you needed two people to play it.
Okay.
And a lot of times it was just myself, and no one wanted to play. So it's like you can't play two controls at the same time. The Intellivision was interesting, but I would say there was this game on the Commodore 64, and it was just called Ice Hockey. And I think it was by a company called Mindscape. And you started off as it was 3-on-3 with a goalie, and you played the center, and you used a joystick, one-button joystick. And you played the center in this game, and you could pass to the wings and the whole bit, and they could pass to you. But, most of the other games, whoever got the puck, you controlled. This game here, you played just the center, and you had two wings. It was 3-on-3.
Right.
And so you had to actually, you started with an expansion team. You could make some trades. So I managed to trade for a decent player. And you just play this game, and you kind of build it up, year by year. It was kind of neat because it had like a franchise mode when you started playing it.
Wow,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my goalie was a 9 on the age limit, so he was an aging goalie that wasn't going to last much longer. So, I had to get what I could out of him. But it was so fun that if you took a penalty, you sat in the box and just watched the game. But
that's cool.
That was like the first real hockey game I played was the Commodore 64, probably back in 1988 and 89. And I would stay up late at night just playing this game all night long on the Commodore 64 because it was just so fun. So that was probably my first really, really good and fun hockey game on the console. And it turns out it was Commodore 64.
64. Did you play any other sports games on the Commodore?
There was a couple of other ice hockey games that were pretty bad, but
right.
Whatever ones they had, I did get. Yeah.
So you talked about the NHL series on Sega before, and of course it was groundbreaking at the time. The Sega and the Madden, and the story with the Madden goes that John wouldn't sign off onto any game program that didn't have 11 on 11. I believe that was the first to have full 11 on 11 play. And so you had that. You had the triple play series for EA for baseball, and they would kind of come up with the stadiums and that. You've talked about that at length before. When did you start to get restless playing those games, wanting something a little bit deeper?
Deeper meaning what now?
Oh, I guess did you start to find them too easy to win? I mean, obviously you talked about you never had the chance to play Bobby Orr until we'll get into that demo that you had in a couple of minutes. But when did you start to get bored playing those? did you?
Oh, bored playing the video games?
Yeah, I'm playing the video games.
Never really got bored playing the games. I just got really frustrated. Again, that first Sega hockey game, which was 91.
Yeah, it's NHL hockey, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a big game changer for me. That you could pull the goalie, you had different lines. It was very arcadey, but it still was the most realistic hockey game you could ever play at the time. It was very, like I say, fast and arcadey, but considering what was out there, that Sega Genesis first one is still on my top 5 video games of all the time.
Oh, the music still gets stuck in my head.
Oh, yeah. And then you had the NHL 94 a couple of years later, which kind of put it all together. But the first one I still like the best, I think, the one from 91. It's the one with the Penguins and the North Stars on it. That kind of broke the ice for me. Then I get into the PlayStation and the Xbox. The Xbox 360 had some really good hockey games, but at some point, when it finally, you get the PS4 and the Xbox One or whatever the heck it is,
right?
The graphics were amazing, and you could do amazing things with it. It just was so complicated to play. I mean, the Sega was, the Commodore 64 was 1 button, and the Sega was 3 buttons. I think it was pass, shoot, and check or something, like hook or something.
Right.
And so when you got this new controller in your hands and you got 2 triggers on each side, you got 2 thumbsticks, and then you got 4 other buttons on there. There's a lot going on there as far as what you're controlling here. I mean, you just don't have enough fingers to cover everything. So I found myself at some point looking down at my fingers just to hit the right buttons, and especially with Madden, I couldn't get to a Madden tutorial probably after 2016. It was just, okay, now juke and get in the end zone. I'm juking, and every time I get tackled, and it just got to a point where I was like, the hell with this? It's, and so the hockey they had, luckily they put this thing called the legacy mode, so you could play it with the 3 buttons from NHL 94. Basically pass, shoot, and check or whatever. But the thing is, the game is designed for all those other buttons. So if you tried to play the legacy mode, which was simpler, people would just walk around you because you didn't have any access to any of the special things that you needed to do. And it became very frustrating. It became just not fun. And
you played online, right?
I would play online a little bit to a point where I didn't play much. I would play with friends, but still it was just so frustrating because it just became not fun. And I had a lot of fun playing myself, but at some point the game just passed me by, and it just like a lot of the other games was not fun. I remember a Tomb Raider game that I played, and the opening scene, Lara Croft's walking up the snow, and you had to jump across and use your pickaxe and grab the ice.
Right.
37 times.
Oh my goodness.
It took me to a point where I was going on YouTube to see what I was doing wrong, because it was like jump, and it would show you the jump button. So you hit A to jump. Now use your pickaxe, and you hit the button for the pickaxe, and I would fall to my death every time. 37 times. And I'm like, well, if this is the opening scene and I can't do this opening scene, what's the rest of the game going to be like? And,
absolutely.
And so it just got to a point where I wasn't either doing it right, or I wasn't understanding what the game wanted me to do. And so instead of enjoying the game, I was fighting the game, and just, if I jumped across and I got lucky, but it just stopped being fun. I want to have fun. And 37 times of failing something in a row,
that's not fun.
You walk away, you're like, okay, I'm never ever going to play your game because I can't go through the opening part, and
right.
I don't know. It could have just been me and my dexterity, or just me and my vision, or whatever it was. I was unable to do it, and that's when
you weren't 17 anymore, and I think that's what a lot of them came.
And all they did is they made these games so much more. I don't want to say difficult. That's not the right word, but complex is probably a better word.
Yeah.
So they made these games so much more complex. I mean, to a point where the last time I tried to play NBA 2K, which was probably 16, 17, or 18, one of the two, they had a sale on it, and I got it. And it was okay to take a fadeaway shot, pull the left trigger, pull down on the left thumbstick, push up on the right thumbstick, hit the RB button, and then as you're fading away, hit the B button or the A button. What? No, that ain't going to happen. And that was only one shot. There was like seven different shots.
Lost me with that,
yeah, and it lost me too. And there was 7 different ways to take a shot in that game, and that was just one of them. It's like, how am I going to remember? Like, I would get done with tutorials. Like, I don't remember any. There's so much here. It's kind of like just first day at work, throwing everything the company does at you on the first day, and you're like, something? I didn't retain any of that. And that's how video games were becoming. And people loved it. People loved it. That you could do all these weird shots and use all these buttons, and I couldn't do it. And so at that point, mid 2015, 2016, 2017, I was done with the video games. In fact, I was doing a video game podcast.
Right.
And I told him, I says, there's no sense me being on the show anymore because I don't play video games anymore. It's just, I'm just frustrated with these things now.
So you probably read the hockey news as a kid. If you didn't have a subscription, you got to read them once in a while, or Hockey Digest or whatever. Were you aware of companies such as Stratomatic or Appa growing up?
Not Appa. I'd never heard of Appa growing up.
Okay.
I do remember seeing advertisements for Stratomatic Hockey. The only problem is, as a teenager, or, whatever I was, 10 to 15 years old at the time, when I'm looking at the ads for Stratomatic and you see the font that they use was some kind of like a computer type of font.
Yes.
The old Stratomatic. Maybe they still use that today. But you see in this magazine.
Well, you have that second year set. That's the font that they used.
Okay. But you see that in a magazine, and it's like Stratomatic Hockey in this computer font. And I had no clue whatsoever what that game was going to be. But in my mind, it was some kind of a weird. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was nothing like the game is. Let's put it this way. I did not think of a game with cards, with player names, rolling the dice, and inside shot, outside shot, and goalie cards. That was like I don't know what I thought it was, but when I thought it, the connotations was, wow, this is some weird statistical game that I'm going to use a ruler and a protractor.
Not very fun sounding, does it?
No. And I think if they had put a picture of one of the cards in the ad, so I could say, here's a typical card for the game, and they had Bobby Orr's card or, whoever, Rick Middleton or whoever, it would have given me a little bit of idea what this game was all about. But my initial impressions of Stratomatic Hockey with that particular font was just, well, again, I'm going to need a ruler and a compass and a protractor to play this game. And it's like, damn, not interested.
So no one played Strat baseball at school? Even I saw some Strat baseball in high school.
I didn't see anybody playing anything like that, remotely like that.
Okay. So flash forward to 2015, 2016. You're frustrated with the games. You're a big sports fan and all that. What triggered you to want to look deeper into games outside of just the physical reaction of a video game?
Well, I'm a gamer. I like to play games. That's my hobby. That's my relaxed time. I played umpteen hours of Skyrim, on 3 different consoles. I love that game. And the zombies, me and the wife would play with a couple every Saturday night for 3 or 4 hours. We would shoot zombies for 3 or 4 hours and chat while we did it. So I always liked the gaming aspect of it. But at some point, she got tired of playing the game, so she didn't play anymore. And the games were becoming too complex for me. Okay. But I still wanted to do something. And I had that football mogul. And I think I had met them without realizing I met them. I met them at PAX East one year when I was doing the video game podcast.
In Boston.
In Boston. And they said, yeah, go on our Facebook page and you can download last year's game for free. And so I got the football and the baseball mogul. And what was so good about it was the fact that there was no hurry. There was no rush. There was no... you didn't have to hit a button in a certain amount of time. It's like you sat there and, okay, I'm going to play this year. I'm going to play the Patriots, and okay, I can go handoff up the middle, and I don't have to run the play. I don't have to use any joystick or any buttons, or I just run the play. And that it was such a relaxing game. It was so relaxing, and it was just so fun. And I think the first thing I did, and I've told this story 100 times, the first thing I did is says, wow, I'm going to mess around here, and I traded Ken Stabler for Steve Grogan. And let's see how the 76 Raiders do with Grogan and how the 76 Patriots do with Stabler. And I thought that was fun, and I don't remember how that panned out, but the idea that I could do that, that's something I could never do before. I really just, that was a big deal for me. Football Mogul was fun. And then it's like, okay, let's get down that rabbit hole. What other games like Football Mogul are there? And then I found the Action PC games.
Right. So we hooked up a couple years later.
I got the football first, and I didn't even know how to start a game. Honestly, I was out of my mind. I can't start a game. How do I play one of these teams? Why are they making it so difficult? Blah, 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 blah. And then I think it was one of your streams, I think, that you went and you clicked the C to H, from C to computer to H human. And I was like, I wouldn't have thought of that. And not that I read the directions, because I didn't read the directions. I thought I could just pick up and play this game. But I wouldn't have thought about clicking on that. But once I did that, then I could play the game, and I felt a little bit better about, okay, now I can play the game. But I got stuck right off the bat with Action PC Football.
So what made this all click for you?
I don't know. I know that, watching, like I said, your videos and other people do videos helped me learn games.
Right.
Whether they were computer games or cards and dice games. But just the idea of being able to go back into the past and playing some of my favorite players, and it was completely stress-free. There was no stress about the games and buttons, and it was just all completely casual at my own pace. I could play and walk away, get a drink, and come back and do the next play or make the next pass or whatever it was. So those games are just so relaxing and so casual. And to go back in time and play those games it was so fun. So I don't know what really clicked or not. I don't know, at least as far as the computer games. But when you convinced me to get the cards and dice, you said, get Strat Hockey. I think that was the first. I don't know if it was Shootout or Strat. I forget which one I played first.
I think it was Shootout, because you didn't try Strat until you came up here, and we were already doing the show started the show by then.
Okay.
It was, I think I sent you the great teams or great players of the 80s. And I thought that you would like that. And so I think that was, and now you had the website, run the website for Shootout. But I believe that was your first.
I think it was yeah. Okay.
Nice game.
Yeah, because you said, hey, check out this game. Just read the instructions. And he says, and if you like it, then buy it. And so I read the instructions, and I said, so I bought it. You know what I mean? And that's the gentleman's agreement we had with that. So I bought it in a bunch of seasons, and I think every other day I bought a new season, and I'm down at Staples, and I'm printing them out, and I was sending you pictures of, here I am at Staples again, got another season of Shootout. And that was just really fun. Shootout was a good introductory game, and it's still one of my favorite games. But when I got to Strat, and that finally clicked it really took a long time.
You brought it up here.
I brought it up here. I'm walking through Burlington, Vermont with Strat Hockey under my arm, But when we, even when I played that game with you, we only played a few minutes of a game. It still wasn't quite clicking. But at some point, after playing it enough, it just
Quebec and Hartford, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I ordered I ordered a brand new game from Strat with one of the seasons, and they sent me all the teams by the Word documents while I'm waiting for the 6 teams to arrive by mail. So I printed out, was it Quebec Hartford or something like that?
I think it was Quebec Hartford,
and I still got the notes from that game I played, and it just it was Joe Sakic getting stuffed on a breakaway late in the game, and on the last flip of the card, a rebound goes to Lafleur to tie the game, and I needed a 1-16, and I rolled an 18, and what a save it was by Sidorkiewicz to win for Hartford. And I just couldn't believe how cards and dice could just mimic a hockey game. It's still to this day, and that's what I told Jamie that one in that article too. To this day, I still don't know how it's done, where you can roll dice and look at a card or look at a chart or whatever it is, and feel like you're at a game, and it just works.
So what possessed you to take your camera down to the beach and start talking about your transition from video games, digital, to dice, when you would really had just done Shootout at that point?
I have always cataloged things in my life. I don't know why. Okay. I take a ton of photos. I take a ton of notes. I always had a camera on me back in the day, even before cell phones. I would take pictures of us, So I would always catalog things that would happen in my life, and just like to have a little video record or, pictorial record of things that would happen. And so I said, something, this is a big deal because I'm really enjoying these card games on the table here. It's something I never thought I would, never knew what it was. And I'm getting away from the video games, which were, this was 2018?
No, 2019.
2019 is when I decided to do that?
Of 19, yeah.
Okay, so it's 2019, and I had been playing video games since 1977. So do the math.
It's a long time.
That's a long time to be playing games. So I'm playing all these games, all these video games. And so it was hard to pull myself away. And it was hard to pull myself away from the video game podcast because I've been doing that for 10 years. And, my friends are still doing it and in the whole bit. And I just got away from it. I don't know. I don't want to say I grew out of it, but maybe the game grew out of me, grew away from me, And I don't think video games are stupid, and I'm not thumbing my nose at them anymore by any means. No. I still play them once in a while, but I just find that I get really frustrated when I play them because I just can't do the controls as nearly as well as I could back in. Even when I play on easy mode, sometimes it's still difficult for me. It's like, man, if I can't play easy mode, I'm in trouble here.
They have tournaments that pay like $250,000 to win.
Oh yeah.
Madden and FIFA and Gran Turismo. I mean, they're not stupid at all.
No, there's serious players out there that do these games here, But yeah, so I decided to catalog the journey and do a video blog of myself getting away from video games and getting into the tabletop games because I thought they were like it was so neat. It's like, holy cow, look at all this stuff. It's neat, and there's all these hockey games I can play, and I'm playing old Bruins games and. It just was something else. And so I just figured I would talk about it. So I think I did 2 or 3 just going around town and setting up a camera and doing it. It's kind of weird doing it that way because, everyone's looking at you. So I tried to go out early in the morning when nobody was out. And right. I did, like I say, 3 of them, I think.
I think around there, yeah.
And they were coming out okay. And I did a few, like when I walked the dog, I would take the phone with me, and that was kind of fun, a dog walk video. And I just said, the videos are okay, but it's a big hassle setting them up and getting it to sound good and editing video. So I said, maybe a podcast would be better, because audio is a heck of a lot easier to work with.
Yes, it is. So here you are, game newbie. I mean, and you come up with the idea of the Digital Dice podcast. What made you think that you could do that?
I didn't. I didn't. I was doing the video one, and I was getting good feedback on that.
Yes, you were. So, they were good.
So I figured that if I did the audio, I had a little bit of an audience built in. Not there wasn't a lot of people. It might have been 30 or 40 people that were watching these things, but so I said, let's do the audio version. It's a lot easier to do. I can be more relaxed when I talk about it. I don't have to worry about people going by and beeping horns and, look at that guy over there. You know what I mean? So I can just do this in my house and just talk about, catalog my journey with audio. And so that's kind of how that started. I had no idea how it was going to go. I had no idea if anybody would listen to it, but it was just an idea for me to put my thoughts down in audio because I was really excited about these games. I really was, and I like playing them, and I like talking about them. When it's something I like to talk about it, and I like to share that with other people.
Yes.
And that's kind of what the video game podcast was, is that, hey, I played this new game, or I'm playing this game, and I found something new in the game, or I can't stop playing this game. It's been all weekend. So I'm sharing that same video game excitement with the sports simulations games is what I was doing.
Right.
And being older now, and I'm not a kid anymore, I just have a different look at it and different appreciation for it, I guess. Because I hadn't been playing, like I say, these people that play it 40 or 50 years, they probably enjoy it, but they probably don't have that excitement of a brand new guy.
That's true. No, I would agree with that. And just kind of with sheer dumb luck that 15 years into podcasting being a thing that no one really had done this type of show before, or they hadn't stuck with it long enough for them to be a built-in archive. And so here we are 4 years later, the start of the bromance, as Jamie Marshall put in his publication the other day. Thanks, Jamie. And so now let's focus in the second half of this on to, well, I guess the obvious question. If you didn't, this show must have 1,000 times over exceeded your expectations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I first did it was just kind of me sharing my excitement, and that's what we did. Again, what I said about the video game, and you get a little bit of feedback, and it's like, hey, this is great. You do this too, and let's talk about it. And then, I said, I asked you. I says, hey, what do you think about doing this with me? And at first you were like, I don't want to do another thing.
I rolled my eyes. Yeah,
you got a lot of things going on. I think you were still writing at the time, and you would. I don't know if you were doing a podcast or just finished up another podcast. And so you said, well, I'll do a few with you, get you off the ground, see how it goes. And it was like, since like the first episode, we just clicked.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. There was just, we had done a bunch of shows for your roller hockey rink. Had nothing to do with sports gaming. Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And I think so. We had worked together a bit then before we started to do the show. That wasn't the first time that we'd worked together, and so we knew how each other worked. I think a bit, and knew, we both have broadcast backgrounds to some degree, and all that. And so it wasn't that difficult when we started. I had been out of writing for almost a year at that point, and needed to decide whether or not I was going to go back, get myself back into it and go grind out, 15 ways that, pork chops help you pitch better, or do what I'm doing now. And so I think we both made the right choice when it came to that. But yeah, we had worked together before.
Yeah. And it's just that, and I remember when we did it, I said, well, I want this to sound good. Okay, that's my number one thing, is it's got to sound good. And I went out and I bought a really nice microphone, some new software, and then I bought the mixer that I have here. And once I got the mixer set up, like, we did one show without it, I think, and then I think we went back and redid it with the mixer.
Show 0, I think, was there.
Yeah,
but Ron, I bought this very expensive mixer. Like, dude, we haven't even done a full show yet.
Yeah. But this mixer just allows us to, and I still use it for all my broadcasts and everything. So I got my use out of it there. But when I got that, and the ability to make a podcast with that was just so much better. And I thought we sounded good. I was able to add the music and all the sound effects, and everything was done right with this mixer. So that really, it smoothed out the process of making a podcast. It really did. And once we did that, it's like, oh, we got a good sounding show. We got some good chemistry going on. And then it was just, well, is anybody going to listen? And you had talked before about why hadn't anybody done this? And you'd be surprised how many podcasts just fade away after a handful of episodes, because
they're hard work.
There's a commitment to this thing. It really is. And as we start year 5, it's just all kinds of milestones with that, because so many, it's so easy just to say, I'm just too busy, you don't want to do it. And then after 3-4 weeks go by, and then you don't do the show anymore, and so many podcasts fade out. And sometimes you got to stick to it, even when you don't want to record. You got to get on there and get that weekly show out, or every 10 days or whatever it is, and stick with it. And, if you get 25 listens, great. But you can't sit there and just give up, and if you want to keep doing it. So that's one thing, we kept doing it and pushing forward, and we tried to market the show a little bit to the different communities to say, hey, if you want to come in and listen to a talk show about what we do, come on in and listen, and we got feedback shows, and it took a little while. But eventually it started to grow. And even today, we still, after 5 years or 4 years, what it is, we still got people that just found us.
Yeah.
And that's, it's kind of weird. It's like, maybe we've only scratched the surface of the people.
You would think that. I mean, we've repeated some things a little bit, or at least tried to take a different take on it. And the general rule of thumb is if we talked about it if it's been more than 2 years, I feel comfortable revisiting because you don't want to recycle the same things. But, the first few times that someone said, oh, I've started listening from the beginning and we were at show 20.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of cute. At 192, when someone goes, I'm going back to listen to all your shows. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads to my next question is, what has been the biggest surprise for you since we've started doing this?
I would say the support that we get.
Yeah.
And not just with our Patreons and the people that donated on year one when I was unemployed for 6 months. And that's when the podcast was in jeopardy because I had no money, and people stepped up and paid the bills so we could keep going. And they still do, with the Patreon there. I just didn't know how many people would listen, how many people would like it. I had no idea. I really had no idea, what would happen when this thing started, because this was just me putting my thoughts down in an audio show and try to share my experiences, and they've been good experiences so far. And that's just, that way that people could comment and we could communicate with other people. So I guess it's just been the support of the show. And, we still get emails from people that just found us. And every once in a while we get an email from someone who'll say, I've been listening for quite some time now, and this is my first time writing in, and just I look forward to the show, and it's so important. This show is important in my life, and listening to two friendly voices, so to speak, is a big deal, and that's something that boy, how do you react to that?
Yeah,
and we even got some people that we talk with on a daily basis, and they're like, you guys don't really know how far this podcast reaches, and we probably don't. That's the thing. And
we sit there and figure it out. And I had done some limited projects before, and you just don't know how many people out there do this stuff. And so when you write about a baseball team, or the first podcast I did was for college football, those, have potential for millions and millions and millions of people because rabid that. And you tried your best to reach out to as many people as you could and all that. But there are, for even the worst baseball teams, there are 30, 40 different competing newspapers and radio stations, and that it just takes a lot to get in the door. This community is very limited as far as maybe 10,000 people play these games out of a country of 340 million, and some in Canada and some in the UK, because I know we've had listens from both of those. And the Philippines, where's Hockey Unreal from? He's from Canada originally, but but I think probably the Philippines or Thailand or something like that. He'll tell us. And so that there's not millions and millions of people doing this. And that anytime that Keith Hernandez mentions Strat on a Mets game on SNY, Gary Cohen rolls his eye. Okay, there you go, talking about your game again. That it's like, okay, where is this? Are we going to get 100,000? Your good friend Ray Arnott, who does Around the Layout, the podcast for model. It's a lot more people who do model railroading.
Yeah, he's been doing his show for 1 year now, and he's already eclipsed our audience. Because he's just got a bigger pool. Yeah, he's just got a bigger pool of people to work. Right. I think he's surprised how fast it grew too, because he's just like, holy cow! I was getting 50 listens, and now I'm 500 to 1,000. It's like it took us 4 years to get up to 800 to 1,000 listens.
Right, but that's what we get on any given show is 800 to 1,000, and so and I know that COVID and everything associated with that particular year is not looked back with rose-colored glasses. But for the gaming industry, when people were forced to stay home, it was a record year, I know, for sale. Strat, by the end of April, had already outsold what they had done in all of 19.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that the gaming anything indoors did quite well. The Peloton. Look at the Peloton bicycle there. That had record years too. And
that poor woman got away from hers, right?
Yeah. Now they're I think they're out of business now. But
it really was kind of silver lining, catch lightning in a bottle type deal. That it's just kind of a strange way to look at a period in all of our lives that was very unhappy. I
was able to play so many games the summer of 2020, but again, it was such a depressing time that it was my first time in 25 years that I didn't have a job. Okay, I think it was 1995 was the last time I was laid off and out of work. And so here we are 25 years later and I'm out of work, and usually I'm a 6 or 7 day a week work guy. I have so many jobs, And so here I am with absolutely nothing to do. And so I started playing these games and learning these games and building up my YouTube channel with some videos and a whole bit. But still, though, it was not a happy time.
No. I'm not trying to say that it was.
No, but what I'm saying is that it was such a double-edged sword there, because at the same time, on one hand, I'm playing all these games. I remember playing full tournaments of History Maker Golf that would take me 4 to 5 hours, but I had all day because I couldn't go anywhere. You were restricted, as we all know, what you could do. Right. But so I was playing all these games, but it was this big dark cloud hanging over you every single day about, am I ever going back to work? And, I'm not getting paid for this and I'm running out of money. So great, I can play games and stuff. But the reality is, at some point I need to get my business back up and running. I need to go to the hockey rink, and so there was this dark cloud hanging over the head that was the other side of the sword. So, I mean, it was fun playing games, and the gaming, like I say, the companies there, they probably did quite well because everyone's staying home. But it wasn't a vacation by any means.
No.
Like if you take a vacation, I'm going to take 2 weeks off and I'm going to play games for 2 weeks. It's a vacation. That's what it is. When we were in May or June of 2020, there was no end in sight. Right. It felt like it was going to be this way for the rest of our lives. And that thought alone, waking up every day hearing, we're still shut down and numbers are going up, and it was such a depressing time that it wasn't a vacation by any means. And so
4 hours of sleep, and at one point we were doing a show every night. It wasn't always gaming related, along with pumping out extra stuff just to keep people entertained while they were home. That's not to dwell on that. I mean, I have the ABC Sports banner next to me to prove it. Yeah. But, I think it was just kind of fortuitous that the show was starting to find its way when we were all just kind of forced to do something else just to keep occupied. And
I'd be interested myself. We've had people say that they've gone back and listened to the shows through the COVID months. And I'd be interested to go back again at some point and listen to those myself, because there was some shows that I was completely miserable. And we still did the show, and just with everything going on and just the bad news and just everything being so just as it was. I mean, if you were working at home and getting paid, it was a lot different than if you weren't doing work. So, I mean, I was in that group that was, not happy about anything. And, I'd be interested to go back and listen to those shows to see how depressed I actually was in those shows and how just out of my mind I was with things, and compared to now where, things are pretty much back to the way they were.
Yeah. It's been a normal summer here. And so coming out the other end of that now coming into, starting year 5, where we've beta tested games. We've talked with Dave Cook from Action PC. We've talked with John Herson from APA. I mean, that would have been, we've landed for the community some pretty A-list guests over the last 4 years. Did you ever think that it would get that far?
Did I ever think we'd have some of the big names on that we have? No, probably not. I mean, I was just starting out in this hobby, so they don't know me from anybody. And I remember, I would talk to them on email once in a while, or if I had a problem, I would talk to these people. Say, hey, why don't you come on my show? And you never get a response back or anything like that.
Right.
So I think it's just one of these things that, after doing it for a couple of years or 3 years, you develop, a little bit of a resume for the show. You get a little bit of, I don't know if you want to call it respect or what it is, but I mean, when anything else, like you open a business tomorrow, and it's okay, it's brand new, but if you've been there for 3 years, you've kind of established yourself now. And so the friend I used to work for at the sports memorabilia store said that 90% of businesses don't make it past year one. Just because you don't, financial outlays and unexpected expenses, and you can prepare and plan and do this, that, and the other thing. But when it comes right down to it, reality is different from the plan. Well, I can see that because you open a business and you get family and friends that are there at the beginning, they're supporting you, and it's all rah, rah, rah. And then things settle down, and now you're into the daily grind, and you find out how much fun it actually is, and how much do you really want to do this? Is this something I really want to do? And am I making any money at it? And at some point, you do got to just, cut the losses or whatever they call it there. So yeah, I can see that. Podcasts are the same way. I used to listen to so many podcasts that are done now. All the video game podcasts I listen to, there's only a couple of them still around. It's tough. It's tough to commit, to doing a show every week. Because there's show prep. You talk about what you're going to talk about on the show beforehand.
10 hours. We do about 10 hours of prep to do for a 1 hour show.
Yeah. What are we going to talk about? I don't know. How about this? I don't know. How about that? Oh, this guy had a good idea, or that guy had a good idea. So every day we talk a little bit about what we're going to do, and then we sit down and bang it out or whatever. But there is a commitment to it, to doing a show.
Yes.
And and I think that's where, a lot of people don't understand them. And maybe that's why no one's ever done this, because it's like, do you want to, be shackled to a weekly show that you got to set up, prepare for, record, edit down, and then put up on the internet, and then, tell people the show's up. It's a few hours a week and that you have to commit to. And, again, a lot of shows I used to listen to, all gung ho at the beginning, and then after a while, it's like, I really don't want to do this today.
Yep.
And then the next week, it's like, yeah, well, let's put it off another week. And then, Joe's got to go camping, and then, I'm just too tired today from work. And next thing you know, it's 3 months have gone by, and you don't even think about doing the show anymore. And that's what happens. I mean, there's been so many. I go back now on my my iPhone to my podcast. It's like, man, these guys haven't put out a show in 4 years, and they just stopped. Like not a goodbye, it's just there was never another one made, and you don't know
it's
why.
Work. It is work.
It is work to do this. So I can see how, there's not a ton of people doing this, because there is a commitment, there is work to do. Again, it's not rocket science or brain surgery, but there's a commitment to it, and you need to sound good in the whole bit. And, so that's probably why that, when you asked me that question before, I can see how that there's not a lot of people doing this, because it's not glamorous. It's really not.
No. No.
I mean, the hour show that we do is kind of fun, but all the stuff before and after, it's not fun. It's all yucky stuff. But
was there a moment, and I don't want to sound like that we're spiking the football here, was there a moment that you realized that we were on to something? We're starting year 5. We've made it. Again, I don't want to sound presumptuous and all gloating in that, but is there one moment or one email or something like that when you went, oh my goodness, this is something that.
No, I can't think of one thing that I said.
I can't either.
It's kind of like when you ask bands. It's like, hey, when did you realize that you made it? You got 3 records out, and now you're playing the Boston Garden. When did you, we still get the emails, and I think it was maybe when we got one of our first emails from somebody we didn't know, because your buddies, they'll always tell you you're doing a great job in the whole bit. But when you get an email from someone that you don't know, and Ray from Around the Layout, he told me he got one the other day and he was floored. He said there was this truck driver that listens. He looks forward to his podcast as he drives and travels on the highway with his big rig. And Ray's like, holy cow, here's a guy that I don't know that's looking forward to listening to me in his truck as he drives across the country. He goes, he's like, Dave, this just kind of floors me. And I guess when we get those emails, it's like, holy cow, here's someone that we don't know that took the time to write to us, that enjoys what we do, and it's very humbling. And it's just so I don't know if we've made it per se, but I guess going into year 5, I guess we've established something.
We are, yes. Yeah, so I would say that, and yes, it is very humbling. I remember when I started the Retro Sports Network. Every once in a while, I didn't put my email out there, but I would get emails with long stories. Now, there's some downsides to that too, and we're not going to get into. But legitimate stories about this. And again, we had one this week. I hadn't played in 45 years, and got on the show and got into it. We've done more in the last couple of years with authors and stuff. I mean, obviously, what you did with the 1899 Cleveland Spiders is Hall of Fame worthy for the attention that they got, for the people that going through. And, we had, Mr. Hedrick on, who wrote the book on the 1899 Spiders, and we did 2.5 hours with him on a Saturday night, having an author chat and that. And so, yeah, I mean, is that the project you are proudest of that was completely related to the show?
Oh yeah, I would have to say yeah. I mean, I started that with Action PC, and I couldn't figure it out. They kept losing games. I was like, this ain't any fun. And then when I got it in Strat, I do like the Strat PC baseball. It's one of my favorite games to play on the computer, and because you're learning cards and dice at the same time. There's something fun about seeing the dice roll and trying to guess the play. And they had 1899. I got the Spiders, and I like the bad teams, and it just kind of started to work. And having the old stadiums in the background was fun. And then it was Washmeister who sent me all the photos. And then when I put the photos into the players, that gave you something to talk about. It's like, look at this guy's mustache here. He could hit a home run with his mustache. You know what I mean? That whole project, it just fell into place. Steeler fan buggy whips on the corner of Smith and Main Street with our sponsor. Yes. Steve Towers Elixir. I mean, everybody came in and had a little story to tell, and we were having fun with it with, our fake sponsors, and just, it just turned into a fun time that just, and win or lose. I mean, you were rooting for the Spiders the entire time, but they didn't win many games. And it was like I say, it was like watching the 76 Buccaneers. You're pulling from the win, but you know that they're not going to really win.
Oh my goodness. It was 10 times worse. I mean, when we had Mr. Hedrick on, you got to figure they played the last 3 months of the year on the road.
Yeah. Cause
they never went back to Cleveland. And all day games. And so you've lost 25, 26 straight, and you have all night to think about it. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing? You're going to the tavern.
Yeah, you don't care.
And you don't care. I mean, there must have been so much cirrhosis with that team after that. I mean, you get PTSD from that.
When we had him on, and I read the book, and then we had him on, that project it took on a life of its own, because now it went more from just being the Cleveland Spiders to having an idea what that team was going through, and the different players, and that German pitcher, and I forget his name now, that was just a nutcase, and people showing up hungover and drunk, and then learning that some games only had one umpire.
Right.
And the stories he told, how umpires were missing calls and the whole bit. So, and it's 1899 too. I don't even know how far west, the country had expanded at that point.
California was a state.
Okay. But it's just California, like the league only went as far as St. Louis. So, I mean, everything beyond that was well,
it was all on the rail line. There certainly wasn't any flight.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just a different time with stuff on the rail and games being rushed because of the sun going down. It wasn't modern day by any means. So
it was considered unmanly to hit a ball out of the park.
Imagine that. Yeah.
I just can't imagine that. That is
So that project, when he contacted me about writing the book, and I got the book and I read it, and then we had him on and we talked baseball for I talked with him for an hour or two before he come on the show, and then we talked another couple of hours. It just it just painted this big picture of 1899 baseball, and then when I sat down to do that, I was just. You're back in 1899. You were focused now on that, and you're talking about immersion. I don't think I'll ever have a project that's quite immersed as that.
So here's the hockey guy who really doesn't like baseball, and your most well-known project isn't Bobby Orr or Tampa Bay or anything like that. It's a baseball team that stunk 124 years ago. But that's your biggest claim to fame. You brought them all back to life and was appreciated by another generation. And as long as YouTube is around, people will be able to go back and root for that 23rd win when you took out Noodles Hahn. Congratulations.
And I put in a guy that I didn't know, because, again, they're all 1899. I don't know anybody. So I just threw in a pitcher. And it turns out that this guy pitched in one game, and I don't think he ever got out of the inning. I don't even think he got an out in real life, so that's why he got racked around. But that was just kind of par for the course. That just added to the story. It really did. Okay, we're going to bring in this guy that never got anybody out against the Spiders, and the Spiders rack him up. It's like, okay. Yeah, just everything about that project. It was a good time. It was such a feel-good time every time I brought the Spiders out. It really was. It just
absolutely.
No expectations of them winning, and the idea was that they were going to lose. Just how bad it was. Could we get through a game, a 10-0 game, and just have a few laughs and the whole bit? And if they kept it close, good for them. If they fell apart at the end, well, you knew they were going to fall apart. Yeah, I would say that's my my best product I've ever done. The one I'm most proud of, and again, it just happened. It was not planned out. I just started it on a lark because they're a bad team, and you know me, I like the bad teams. I mean, everybody plays the better teams, but it's fun to go back and play the bad teams. It really is, and that one just found lightning in a bottle with everything that happened around it.
So, last question: where do you see your gaming going from here as we start year 5? You've started to do some of the what-if stuff. You've started to do some draft stuff. You've dabbled a little bit with fictional. Where do you see your gaming journey going over the next year? If we sit down at the end of 5 years, what will you have hoped to have done over the next 12 months?
I don't know where it's going to go, but I do know that, I've definitely expanded and grown as a gamer.
Yes.
I've gone away from the quicker play games, which I still play, but I've gotten away from them and playing some of the longer games. I've attempted some long projects, and I don't do very well at them because there's so many other. I like to play a ton of games and a ton of teams, and to get stuck playing one team and one project, I haven't done that yet. So maybe at some point I'll get back and finish some of my longer term projects. But I have been playing a lot of the, like I say, the Franchise Hockey Manager 9 come back onto my table, and I'm really enjoying doing some general manager things, trading players and offering contracts, and on a light basis. I'm not deep into that, but that stuff I never ever wanted to do, and now it's okay. Let me give this a try here. Let me see how this goes, and so that's been fun there. And even with the OTP 24, I picked up that too, and I've been playing a little bit of that. And even the Mogul games, there's some general manager mode, and you can sign players or not. I'm enjoying my fantasy drafts, and I've done those in a few different games where you just pick players and initial draft. Those are always fun. Those are big what ifs, but those have been fun. I'd like to think that I'm going to just expand out, maybe go back to some games that didn't work for me the first time, because I got a handful of games that didn't work for me, and I found that now that I've kind of established myself in the gaming way of doing things that if I go back to games, they make a little bit more sense. You know, and that's the one thing I didn't talk about in the beginning is when I first started doing these games, the biggest learning curve was getting used to the games in general. Because it's such a different language. It's like learning a new language because I'm rolling dice and it's 11 to 66 and there's no 7, 8s or 9s. So I mean, it doesn't go from 16 to 17. It goes from 16 to 21, and stuff like that. It took a while to get used to. It really did. It's because when I'm adding 1 to 16, I'm thinking 17. But no, it's 21 if you're playing base 6. And just how it was, flipping a card and, an outside shot versus an inside shot. And you check this card or, you go to this chart and app or whatever it is. So it probably took a good year or two for me to get comfortable in what's going on. So now when I go back to some games that I didn't do well in, especially in the beginning, they make a heck of a lot more sense because I've kind of done it before. I was like, okay, now that I've played a ton of games, I have an idea how games play now. Whereas in the beginning, I had no clue on how to do this stuff.
Right.
And I suppose it'd be the same with video games. If you sat down and tried to play, Madden or NHL or whatever on the video games, you'd have a hard time with it if you've never done it before. But after a few years, you'd be like, oh, now I get it. Once you get a handle of how to use the controller, every game uses the same basic features on the controller. So, and that's what I used to tell my wife. He says, once you play one game with the controller, you can play them all. And so that's kind of how it was.
So I can't imagine for the life of me that anyone that has listened to the show for the last 4 years isn't aware of how to watch your stuff. But for maybe the person that is new, I mean, I'm going to read off how to get a hold of us in a second. Where do they find your stuff, Dave?
Over on YouTube. It's Dave Gardner Videos is what it is. I just search Dave Gardner over there. And that's where you can find me over on YouTube in my little corner of the world over there. And it's been fun doing the show and doing the videos. And the thing is that when I first started doing this, there was a lot of videos that showed me how to play. The Al Wilson, Steve Tower, the Dave out there in San Francisco, who's no longer around anymore, at least on YouTube. There was so many channels that helped me learn games, even the Downey games. How to play the quick play games. And so it was like, man, these people are taking out their time to show people how to play games and help people learn how to play games. And they're doing this on their own time and their own dime. And so it's like, man, I'd like to kind of do that too. When I learn something, I share it on my channel. Whether it's putting graphics in a game or it's like, hey, I just figured this out, or hey, I just learned this new game. What do you think? And even if the game's been out for a while, I still do a video on it because you never know who hasn't seen the other ones, or maybe somebody's video didn't click and mine will, or vice versa. And so I just continue to do that on my channel. I like to share things that I've learned. If you will, that's kind of what my channel's about.
That's huge.
And I do a lot more than just the sports sim on my channel. You see some of my hockey stuff on there, and occasionally a product review, and things like that. I just try to share some things that and even if it's just gameplay. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm going to open up a chat room and play some Apple Hockey tonight, and just have some fun.
It's going to suck when he becomes the new spokesman for ShamWow, right? All right. So before we say goodbye to Dave and say goodnight to you, we'll tell you that, ways to get a hold of us. There's a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/digital dice, where we have 1,400 plus members.
Wow.
I never would have thought that after.
I remember we hit 200. We were like, wow, we got 200 people in the group.
We got 200. We have 1,400 members of the Facebook group. So facebook.com/groups/digital dice. The website, www.digitaltodice.com. The email where you talk to both of us, digital2, that's the word TO, dice@yahoo.com, or you can send us a text or leave a voicemail at 978-751-DICE. It's 978-751-3423, and one of us usually is pretty good at getting back to you sooner or later. Well, hard to believe. That's it for year 4. Next week, we'll have a regular show where we'll talk about what we're playing and come up with a topic, and we'll argue about that for 6 or 7 hours before we come up with something. And we've got some people chomping at the bit to come on the show, and we're really going to do something special for episode 200, which I believe is going to be out right around, give or take, Labor Day weekend. Continue to stay weekly. I think one of the biggest surprises for me is that over 4 years, we've produced 192 shows, that there's still something that we can do weekly. That tells you that we do pretty much 50 shows a year.
That's probably the hardest part of things is that, it's okay, what are we going to talk about this week? Hey, let's talk about this. Well, we've already talked about that twice. Well, how about we talk about this? No, we've already talked about that too. And that's when it does get kind of tough. And I keep a running list of topics and I write them down, and we sometimes look at them all. It's like, no, we don't do any one of those. And luckily though, with our Patreon people in the Discord, somebody will come up with something and say, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Best focus group ever.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm Ron.
I'm Dave.
And we'll talk to you the next time.
Bye-bye.